Hello everyone, and welcome to my video on an effective strategy for English language teaching. Over the years, I found out that one of the most effective approaches to teaching English is TPR. In this video, I'll go through how TPR works and why it is so effective, and share a short example where it helped my students significantly improve their language skills. TPR stands for Total Physical Response, a language teaching method. TPR is based on the idea that language learning can be most effective when students respond to language input through physical actions, which helps them internalize vocabulary and structures in a natural, memorable way. TPR has motivation and engagement, which uses movement and tasks that mimic real-life situations. This method creates a more dynamic, motivating classroom atmosphere. It also focuses on fluency, this by allowing students to practice language without the pressure of speaking perfectly. I always tell my students to practice and repeat some words they might not know in order for them to remember. I also tell them that it's okay if they don't get certain pronunciations at first. Through time and practice, they will succeed. In my class, for a pre-test pace, I introduce the vocabulary phrases and post pictures on the board for my students to see and write short phrases for giving directions. For example, here I have 4 directions. I have up, down, left, and right. Some other phrases I post are go straight, stop, go to, etc. I have students use TPR to act out the directions. For example, I say turn left and students physically turn left. I also do turn right and the students turn right. This helps students associate with the words with the actions. Sometimes as they are interacting, they make mistakes and go to another direction, and they might laugh a little, but it's part of their learning process. And I tell them that it's okay to give it another try. I like for my students to have fun while learning. For their task phase in pairs, I hand out a map, which is this one. And I asked them to find directions and act like if they were lost. For example, one student pretends and says, for example, can you help me go to the cinema? And the other students will respond with the corresponding answer. For example, they will say, yes, turn to the corner, or go straight to, and so on. This helps interact with one another while using vocabulary words. To reinforce TPR, students can also act out their directions as they speak. For example, they physically walk to the left or they physically walk to the right as they give directions, reinforcing their learning through movement. For the last post-task phase, after the activity, students discuss what went well with the language and what type of language they used. And any difficulties that they encountered, they come to me and they ask me. I also like to go over the vocabulary words at the end of the class to ensure they can use TPR to reinforce the vocabulary and the sentence structures they use. Some important things I like about teaching is that TPR involves very physical movement, which engages multiple senses, and reinforces memory. Movement makes the language more memorable. It encourages my students to engage with language before they start speaking. This physical engagement helps them feel more confident when it's time to produce language during the task phase. One activity that I believe that didn't help me while teaching a class was reading. Reading for students who have Spanish as their first language was difficult because Most of them didn't know the meaning of certain words, and they had difficulty reading and understanding. For my second language learners, reading involved additional challenges because it requires not only decoding the text, but also understanding and interacting with it in a new language. They needed to know the meanings of words and how they are used in context. I tried reading word for word to try to explain the meaning of each sentence, both in English and Spanish, but it all just took so much time translating, and my students got very lost. So I mainly focused on vocabulary, words, so they could understand little by little, and then take off into short readings. In this reflection, I can contextualize the effectiveness of applied linguistics prioritizing learners to language and context. For example, making them have effective tools in facilitating comprehensible input. TPR contributes to this hypothesis by offering language input with physical action. When students respond to commands like jump or sit down or turn left, they are processing and they internalize language through a multimodal experience. The physical responses help make abstract language input concrete and very understandable. For beginners or young learners, TPR lowers the affective filter because it makes language learning active, very playful, and non threatening. In terms of the natural approach in applied linguistics, I use my body language to teach my students an effective way to learn a new language. They can learn new words by also using and seeing body language so that they have a much better understanding and ways they can remember what they learned in a class.